Welcome to the third public seminar of Strategic Communications Education and Research Unit SCERU. I am Chiyuki Aoi, Professor of International Security at GRASP and Director of SCERU. Thank you for being with us today. Before we begin the seminar, please allow me to explain the mission of SCERU a little further. Firstly, SCERU is a global hub of strategic communications experts and educators based up in the heart of Indo-Pacific. SCERU blends academics, policymakers, and practitioners under one strategic communications roof. It was created to serve the goal of enhancing European Union and Japanese strategic partnerships through the provision of strategic communications expertise and global experience. SCERU is couched in a range of EU strategic documents and EU-Japan strategic agreements. Most recently, the April 2021 EU Strategy for Cooperation in the Indo-Pacific was adopted by the EU Foreign Affairs Council. It committed the EU to further develop partnerships and strengthen synergies with like-minded partners and relevant organizations in security and defense. Furthermore, it responds to challenges to international security, including strategic communications, information manipulation, and interference. As such, SCERU's work is grounded in the EU's eastward projection of interests, but the mandate of SCERU is not limited geographically. In an era of globalization and hybridization of threats that know no geographical limits or compartmentalization of security threats, SCERU is committed to enhancing the strategic communications capacities mutually of the EU and Japan. Today, I'm pleased to announce a seminar that brings a strategic communication lens to the current situation in Ukraine and highlights the EU's support to Ukraine. Leading the discussion will be Dr. Shetler-Jones of Enhancing Security in and with Asia, the European Union's Indo-Pacific Facing Program. I am also pleased to be introducing Alina Frolova, former Deputy Defense Minister of Ukraine. And speaking alongside her will be Mr. Lutz Guellner, Head of EEAS, Strategic Communications and Information Analysis. So Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Aoi. Alina, you have just come directly this week on Monday from Ukraine. So before we get into strategic communication specifically, I wonder if you would give us a brief update of the situation in the country.
Thank you for inviting me, and I probably will show a few pictures about what's going on in Ukraine now, because it's more emotional and will give more understanding. Okay, I try to share this one and like this, I believe. So here I'd like to start from print screen of my telephone, demonstrating how usually missile attacks are happening. Each day we got reports about missile attack. Yesterday it was around 70 missiles. And when it starts rising up from some airfield or from some land site, we got the reports with the information in how many minutes we can expect it. And you live inside some kind of a movie when you observe within the each second change in situation, how many missiles are going here or there, and how many missiles are approaching, how the air defense is working, and what are the results of these missiles. So I just make a small printed video of yesterday, half an hour, You see how many reports about missiles, more and more reports, more and more missiles. And finally, you see blows. And finally, you see people who are dead because of this. And this is actually what happened yesterday evening. And we have only in Kyiv 9 people dead. And out of 31 missiles targeted Kyiv, we got 10 which hit something. And afterwards, this is how the Kyiv looked like, because that's complete dark. Yesterday, we have the first blackout in our history. The whole country was blackout. The most of heating disappeared, most of light disappeared. And this is how usually people work now, because you don't have internet, you don't have connection, you don't have electricity, and you need to somehow to do your job, because it's difficult to explain why you are not. And probably I will stop on this about Ukraine. I just would like to, no, I will continue with this. There are some pictures which are coming daily from the different sites, reports about people, reports about killing. And this is, of course, is like a sad part of our life. We got reports about the prisoners of war who are tortured. We got these pictures like many times of the day, and that could be your neighbor, your relative, and you, actually. This is the reports from Bucha, but any released town looks like this now, and we are happy to be released, but that has a price. And of course, we still have a very happy report about...
Because now we have...
Sorry, I will start it from the very beginning, because we still have quite positive stories, which keeps the nation very much on high position of morale. And I would like you to listen to this man from released Kherson, and about his attitude of being free afterwards. Okay.
I am extremely happy that we are finally liberated, that we are free. Because now we have no electricity in the city, no water, no central supply heating, no mobile connection, no internet connection. But we have no Russians. And I'm extremely happy of that. We can survive anything, but we are free.
And this is about how everything goes on in Ukraine now.
Thank you very much. We perhaps have just seen an example of strategic communication right there, but could you tell us a bit from your perspective as having been a Deputy Defense Minister in Ukraine, what has been the importance of strategic communication in this war, and what kind of a role has it played?
Importance in this war was like a very crucial. Actually, you know that we started the war without sufficient weapons and sufficient equipment. And that was the worst part of the story, because the army, I mean the staff, military personnel, they were quite good ready. But if you don't have weapons, that's like a quite interesting story, how to fight the enemy who is like many times bigger than you and many times like more equipped than you. And for us, as for Ukraine, the key issue was to activate people for resilience and to activate partners to provide us weapons. And the faster weapons will be received, the less losses we will have, and the more chances for victory we have. And in the beginning, no one actually, unfortunately, among our partners, believed in our victory. Everyone was quite fatal about what's going on, because comparing figures, you see that there is like a very little chance for Ukraine to beat Russia. And then effective communication started, and not only government, not only Zelenskyy started to talk, the whole nation started to talk. And I would say that this communication made difference. I would say that because of this, we got the weapons. Because of this, we were pressing the government and populations of other countries. And because of this, we reach what we reach. From now on, Ukraine has strategic prevalence on the battlefield because we have enough weapons, because the nation is resilient, because the people are fighting on the streets if they see occupiers, because people are reporting, they do networking and summarizing, let's say, that we have like a few factors. I won't stop on each of them, but underline some which made the crucial difference. First of all, this is the feeling of the United Nations and United Nation, Ukrainian as United Nation. And we have felt the historical connection with this, and we had felt that we've been fighting with our enemies for many centuries, and we have the winners inside, and that became a grand narrative that we better to die than we'll become slaves. And that narrative is working. This is not something which was declared. This is something which was felt, actually. And this is what I'm telling about, that we have like a historical heroes from ancient times, from Cossacks to current army, which are fighting the same enemy. And that's like a becoming again. And at the same time, as I said, the population has no fear, because understanding of this great role and understanding that we can do this, it gives like a lot of bravery to usual people on usual villages and city and towns. And people were stopping the equipment and tanks just with hands. And they were fighting, and they were making rebels in the cities which were occupied. And this is also actually communication, because if media shows demonstrated this will to oppose, will to fight, that's like a give the credibility and trust in the face of partners, and it gives exchange of energy inside Ukraine. We started to collect money massively for armed forces. Only for the first day of war, we collected $8 million to support the army. And that's like the figures we just began at that time. And people donating every day. And now this is billions of dollars. Like even the amount, it's difficult to calculate. We bought satellites for Ukrainian army to deliver the intelligence. We bought the UAVs, like quite expensive UAVs. And this is everything which is done by population. And that's donations rising and actually implementing this. This is all because of communications. We also activated the huge number of data OSINT people, watchdog organization, who started to observe what's going on, who started to collect the proofs of the crimes of war and started to deliver them. Here you see the like an image with the bodies of civilians lying on the Bucha street. And which proves that they were killed during the Russian occupation. And this is the practical case which can be brought to court. We started to see a lot of symbols. And this is one of them when they after the missile attack, the shelves, the small kitchen shelves stayed on the wall. And if you see a little bit deeper, you will see that there is a little ceramic bird which survived. actually, and it became part of the story, communication story, because about the holding on, how you hold on, and you see that we have it in many pictures, and this bird became very popular present. We started to make memes and pictures about the Ukrainian prevalence in this war. You know that we hit the leading ship of Russian, like a warship of Russian called Moscow, and it's actually goes under the water. And that was also very like a signaling message, because the leading warship with the name Moscow, which we managed to hit without even having proper equipment and navy, that became some kind of very symbolic, and it started to be communicated through different channels. People make the T-shirts, a lot of different souvenirs, and this is the postal mark which was issued by government of Ukraine. And many pictures, many different paintings and many different, I don't know, installations and everything is created Ukrainians, but created by government when they, for example, use the broken Russian equipment as installation in the central cities of Europe to demonstrate again the message that Ukraine can win. Your investment in our victory is like something which was to do. We started to make a lot of volunteering. Here you can see the lady who saved more than 30 dogs from occupation. She just like take them out, but this is like a whole country do what they can. They do volunteering, and we demonstrate it because, again, this is very important to show from the point of view of national resilience. I will skip some slides and just show that we also created platforms, and this is again the government and non-governmental sector for inclusivity of our Western partners, so that all the people can feel that they make an input in this victory in support of Ukraine. We involved the opinion leaders. Lega made the toys with Ukrainian soldiers. Pink Floyd sing a song with Ukrainian singers. So there are a lot of like a symbolic messages which are sent to the world, and they are working actually. And of course, one of this story is the speeches which our president is making almost every day, based on the event which happening. These speeches are going to inside the nation, and they are going to the foreign government, to the foreign people, to international organization, and they really works. So I believe I will stop with this and ready to have a discussion about this.
Thank you very much. I want to pick up on one of the things you were talking about, partnerships, and if we could turn to you now, Lutz. And the European Union has been supporting Ukraine in many ways over this period. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about the strategic communication aspect of that.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, let me pay tribute to Alina and all Ukrainians for their enormous courage and determination as well, which is really outstanding. And of course, the EU is very, very proud also to support you in so many ways, in so many refugees that have found at least shelter in the EU, humanitarian aid, macroeconomic aid. We have supported the armed forces, the prosecution of war crimes, and many, many other things, more than 20 billion euros. And there's more to come. That is really a key message. And we have opened a new chapter, and that is the potential membership of Ukraine in the European Union. Let's talk about this a little bit later. You asked about strategic communications. It was always clear for us that already many years ago, the Ukraine was also under attack, under informational attack. And we provided throughout these years support, help, for example, in structural support, for example, Ukrainian Center for Strategic Communications, the Ukrainian Resilience Center. We have supported the creation of specific communication hubs, and we have, of course, also worked on the dark side, let's say, in the sense of exposing disinformation from Russia towards Ukraine or towards the European Union about Ukraine, for example. We have here, just for those of you who look for very specific things, we have a website which is called EU versus Disinfo, which is targeting very much these disinformation activities, expose them, explain how it works, and of course, raise awareness for this. Now, with all this, I have to be also very, very clear. The Ukrainians are doing an absolutely stunning job. And it's not us who have enabled you. I hope we have made a little contribution to all this. And for us, it is really important to continue this, to give a voice, to help you in all these communication elements also, be it on the, let's say, on the defensive side or on the offensive side. But the real secret of success, if I can say it, is your close cooperation between your civil society and your government, this bringing together the whole country.
Thank you very much. I want to go a little bit deeper now on the kind of observations that we can make about what's evolved and what we've learned from the practice of strategic communication through this period. So it's really a question to both of you. Maybe I'd start with Alina. What compared to the period before this war and now, what have you seen evolve, and what do you think are the most striking changes that you've seen?
I think that we all put a lot of efforts in the situation which happened now, which seems like a very good performance. For many years, many professionals, not only from government, but mainly outside the government, they put an effort in building up the governmental system. We make trainings, we develop concepts of how to cooperate. We push from the non-governmental sector to have this networking and cooperation. Also, the war, which actually started in 2014 and it already lasts for 8 years, it gives the development to many async organizations, to many analytical organizations which rised up, which started to make the analysis, to make the preparation, to make the different materials which gave the fruit for thoughts. And plus, more or less, we started to educate population how to identify the threats in informational sphere. And we had this for 8 years. This was not something which we were happy with as a professional. We consider that we still did not enough. But still, in the critical moment, all this stuff worked. And that was combination of the moment, combination of the threat, and combination of some skills and understanding which happened to us before it.
Thank you. And let's both, in terms of watching how Ukraine has performed and also thinking about how the European Union and others have performed, what sort of takeaways do you have?
I think we can look at both sides, the opportunities and also the threats, because both have changed enormously. And that has to do mainly with the development of the digital space. That is really the new element, that we need to be much more aware of the different possibilities, but also threats that this new space is offering. Let me say a word about the threats, for example. We have seen over the last 6-7 years an enormous development of actors like Russia or many pro-Kremlin disinformation actors who have used this space to run specific campaigns, to discredit, to confuse, to destabilize either Ukraine, but also many other countries. And all these tactics are continue to evolve. It used to be a couple of years ago, relatively simple approaches, for example, using automated bots, etc. Now we see more sophisticated campaigns We have just uncovered one of these campaigns not too long ago, where we see that media with a great reputation in the West are being copied. We have then the content slightly changed, then it's reproduced. It's very difficult to detect these things. And we need to be prepared for this. We really need the awareness, and we need to have the tools also to react to that. So this is really on the negative side, on the threat side, and there also both the Ukrainians have shown us also a lot. We have learned a lot from you, Alina, and all your compatriots. But at the same time, we have also invested massively in this area because we have also been targeted. We have also seen these attacks, and maybe on the more positive side, on the opportunities that we have in this field, I think we need to look very critically at the way we have conducted communication so far, either at institutional side or many of the civil society actors as well. It is more connected, it is more digital, it is more personal, it is also more creative in many sides. And I think there lies a huge opportunity, but also a big challenge for many to really live up to this.
Quick follow-up for both of you. What do you think would be most important going forward for people who practice strategic communication to really double investment on or go further in?
If I can start, I think the most important is not to fall into the traps that I would call of easy solutions. A lot of communication practitioners say, oh, you just need to open a few accounts on social media, and that is whatever, strategic communications, or that will improve your communications. Yes, that's part of the big toolbox that you need to put in place, but there are many other things. And they are not only relating to specific tools and instruments. I think it's a whole mindset that we need to change, to integrate it into our strategy making, into our policy making, and then to translate it into what do I need to put this in place. I think this is really crucial, because very often we look at strategic communications at just better communications. I think it's a real shift of mindset. And that is crucial, that we don't stick just with the easy solutions, but we really go to the roots of the problem. And that is not only how we communicate, but also how we strategize.
I would add that what I see from working approach, this is openness of communication, creating of platforms, because very often government is encapsulated inside itself, and civil society inside itself. And the absence of this interconnection didn't give the ideas flow, let's say. What we see now in Ukraine, that actually government and society communicates in one voice just because there is no limits. So if there is some kind of very good idea in government, they put it online immediately and they call to people to join, and people join in. One of the most visible probably such an approaches was when Ukraine was asking to close the sky. Actually, it was appeal of Zerenskyy to NATO, first of all, but nations started to communicate it massively in social media, in Twitter, making Twitter storm, and then to activate it on demonstration with many people, refugees in Europe going to demonstrations and with this message. And the same happening with civil society, which is rising up the idea, and government take it, and they also include it in the speeches. They also include it in the appeals, into delivery the messages. And I think that this open platform works very good, because any government hasn't sufficient resources to manage all the comms, especially if you're in a difficult situation, especially if you're in situation of on the attack. And I believe in this networking, I believe in communications open, and I believe in these platforms. And I think that this is not new approach, which sometimes is difficult to understand in the government because you are in very structured system and you just like get accustomed that you have like a structure, you need to have a plan, clear plan, but this flexibility, ability to react on the situation around in our society with digital component, which is changing very much, it's, I think this is the key to success.
I'd like to press on the structure question, because Lutz, you deal not only with European Union institutions, but with the member states and others. What are some of the challenges or most important areas for improvement when it comes to structuring the response on strategic issues like this?
Well, I think there is a double approach that we need. On the one hand, you need a very clear center. Somebody needs to be not necessarily in charge, but to bring all these loose elements together. If you rely on structures in governments, in any case, that are too dispersed and uncoordinated, this is recipe for disaster, in my view. The contradictory thing, however, that I have to say, that's of course exactly the opposite for civil society. If you want to put a center in civil society and say this is the center of everything, then you kill exactly the idea that Alina just told us, and this is to unleash this creativity, this cooperation. It needs to be decentral. And you need to think these two things together. You need to bring them together. That's very, very difficult, but in structural terms, very, very important. And maybe let me say another element. That is something that I mentioned already beforehand. You need to think in terms of opportunities, in terms of things that you can do, that you can improve, that you can invest in. But at the same time, you also need to look at the threats. You need to look at the challenges that we see in this space. And for that, you need to have a very good understanding of what we call the digital environment. The informational environment. That's not only digital, is also offline media, is also all these voices. And this is a difficult thing to grasp. You need to research, you need to understand, you need to have data also on this to really strategize in the end. And that will allow you then in the end to develop a strategy to deal with both the opportunities, but also the threats, by raising awareness, by having proper situational awareness, for example, by building your resilience against the threats or building the opportunities, as Alina said. You also need to look at state structures that deal with digital players, with digital actors, such as the social media platforms. We have just done this in the European Union with regulation, with a law, not to regulate what they can say and what they cannot say, but to define the rules of the game, because this is not the Wild West. There are clear values, there are clear rules of the game that also these players need to accept. And of course, we are not an island. We need to work together. We need to exchange with our partners. And that's why I think I can speak for Alina too, we are very, very happy to be here in Tokyo University in Japan to have exactly this conversation, because that is important.
Probably nothing to add, except that I would like to point out also on education, because the resilience of population is based on some critical thinking, ability to work with information. And I think that this is something which should be introduced in schools, in universities, and being some kind of basic part for resilience. We have very good examples in Finland, for example, where they have built quite good system started from the government, and the system of involvement, for example, opinion leaders in analyzing situation. They established a special course for opinion leaders, 200 people collected together. It can be journalists, it can be activists, it can be NGO, it can be someone else, like a sportsman, who are interested in the field, and they pre-select them and they make a special course. And these people passing through education, and then in the critical situation, they have a good evaluation of information. They are spreading information, people looking at them. And therefore, and this system works, they already pass through these courses few thousand people, which for small Finland, it's just a quite essential part. And that's good cooperation, how government can use non-standard approach and try to build up resilience.
As you say, we've been here in Japan the last days at our seminar, and in this country, there is a review of the national security strategy and national defense strategy going on, which we expect to be completed in December this year. I wonder what points have occurred to you being here and talking to Japanese people about strategic communication as they go into this review and kind of a new era of strategic communications in a new context and a slightly different context from the one we have in Europe. What sort of conclusions or recommendations might you consider leaving here?
Well, we didn't come here to give recommendations, but to share our experience, because of course our situations are slightly different. We have a different information environment, different media landscape. But then again, I've seen a lot of very compatible and comparable developments. And I think what I said before in terms of having a very, very good understanding of the opportunities, but also the threats. And let me look at the threat side again. The threat of information manipulation, either from inside or from outside, is also an important issue for Japan, for the Japanese society. And to get a good system that allows you to understand exactly what is going on, how it is happening, and what can I do about it, while safeguarding my key values and approaches to it. And I mean, of course, the most important issue in all this is to uphold the freedom of speech. And we can do this in a way that we identify, for example, manipulative tactics, be it from economic actors or be it also from external actors, in identifying these manipulative tactics and trying to address them. That will also help to safeguard, to really strengthen also freedom of speech, because we protect against manipulative practices. So these are a couple of elements that I would at least like to share and that we discussed also here during our stay. And I think there are many, many kind of more detailed things that one can look at. Maybe also in terms of really the core role of quality journalism, of the role of journalists also in a society is really crucial. And I think there we absolutely, as a like-minded partner, as G7 partner, we are really looking eye to eye in this, in upholding this and promoting this as well.
Supporting what Lutz just said, I would like to say that we need to distinguish media information and proxy media and disinformation. Because before there were no difference, like media is media. If you call yourself media, all the freedom of speech and protection of rights is like about you. But if we take, for example, Russia today, this is not a media. They don't keep any standards. They are completely dependent from government. They spread in disinformation. Why we should treat them as media? This is proxy, and this is part of the war. This is a weapon, actually. And we saw, for example, reaction of the French President Macron immediately after election when he said that I won't give an interview to those who are not media. However, Mr. Macron has now a more light position. I don't know why, but I do recommend to keep this strong position and to distinguish. And this is part of the national security. And that's, I think that the national security should include also information part, but not to separate it. Because we cannot say that, okay, this is information and this is conventional warfare. No, it's so mixed. You see the pictures and video from the battlefield in Ukraine. which are part of communication, of active communication, that's not controlled by government because this is made by soldiers, by local people. And that's important to understand how these like videos or words can be transformed, what message they are sending, how you will use them or not use them, and how the enemy will use them. So that's like a big part about the also educating the military personnel about use of information. So there are like a mixture, we cannot separate it, but we actually should dedicate attention to it in any strategic document targeted at security and defense.
But I don't know if you'd like to add any other comments, or we can go to Q&A or anything.
Well, I can only add that we have taken exactly that step that Alina just mentioned. We have put in our sanctions Russia today because it has been a strategic instrument of another state to support its aims, in that case, in the war against Ukraine. And therefore, we have taken sanctions. And I would really warn against putting Russia today in the same category as Deutsche Welle or the BBC, because it is not. It has nothing to do with editorial freedom, with quality journalism. It is an instrument of the state. And I think also these elements we need to reflect upon. What does this mean? There are many, many outlets, also many websites that pose as information portals. But they are not information portals, many of these. They are sometimes even linked to security services of another state, for example, of Russia. And that is the rethinking, or that is the approach that we need to take to be also critical. Not every piece of information out there has the same value, is produced with the same intentions. And it's high time to be, let's say, at least critical, and to have a system also that allows us to look at these things.
Thank you. We've come to the end of our time. So I would like to start by thanking the University of Tokyo, the SCERU unit, for hosting us, to our audience online and here in Tokyo, and of course, most of all, to our speakers, Alina Frolova and Lutz. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Japan, for supporting Ukraine, and EU, of course, too. This is one of our key partners. And without partners, we do understand that we cannot make this win.
I can only agree to this. And thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you.